Same-sex attraction has absolutely nothing to do with wanting different genitals. And everything after the LGB really is straight people.
And you're very welcome. It's The Beautiful Truth with Fintan Dunn and Melissa Cohen. You're very welcome, Melissa, to The Beautiful Truth.
Well, I'm so glad to be here.
Terrific. And just to let people know what you are, at Belissa, BELISSACOHEN, on Twitter, journalist, commentator, TERF, TERP, outlawed US, trans age, and the slogan is, we're all non-binary.
Yes.
Interesting.
Who is binary? I don't know anybody.
Well, let's just jump right into it and also let people know where we're coming from. I'm going to quote you, Melissa, if you don't mind, in an interview you did in recent days. And you said there, people who oppose transgenderism and the medicalization of children have been mischaracterized as right-wing homophobes, religious nuts, conservatives. And the truth is that almost all of us here are disaffected leftists. Almost all of us are Democrats. Almost all the women are feminists. These are the people who make up the left. And for us to be painted with that brush is just another way for them to discredit us and the message we have, which is the kids need to enter adulthood in intact bodies, and pretending to be the opposite sex has nothing to do with being gay, lesbian, or bisexual. That's a great manifesto, Ballista. Please expand.
Well, I just want to point out when I say that we're all non-binary, sex is binary. We're male or female, but we all have non-binary personalities, and it doesn't affect our biology.
What does non-binary mean? Break that down for me. What is a way of thinking, being?
Well, there are a group of people who claim to be no sex at all, neither male nor female. It's under the trans umbrella, this concept of non-binary. So I always like to say we're all non-binary. No one has a binary personality.
Well, there's certainly a spectrum of human sexuality. And we used to sort of agree on that, but now it seems like there's warfare, open warfare broken out. But let's just break it down a little bit.
Well, when
For
you say
example, go ahead, yeah.
there's a spectrum of human sexuality, I would say there's a spectrum of human sexual behavior, but humans, like all mammals, are a dimorphic species. And even differences of sexual development, which we used to call intersex, are differences in either male or female. There's not a Z chromosome, there's only X and Y. And if you have a differentiation of XY chromosomes or XX chromosomes, it doesn't mean that you're in a spectrum between the sexes.
Okay, that's a fair point. There is a fundamental binary nature to the biology of human beings. And the point you've also made very succinctly is, as you've put it, everything after LGB is straight people, which is an interesting way of putting it. Defend that statement and expand, please, Melissa.
Well, L, G, and B are same-sex attraction, just as the S for straight people is opposite sex attraction. Those are the only sexual orientations: heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual.
That's it, sexually defined. You'd think they did a wrong turn when they started adding T onto it, and it became not just sexually defined, it became gender.
Well, I happen to have looked up the date when the T was added to the LA Gay and Lesbian Center in my city, which is the biggest gay and lesbian center in the world and has the biggest budget. And that was on May 27th, 2014. None of us were paying attention, but I do remember when it was added because I frequently go to that center for various social activities and stuff like that. There were reasons to go over there for different reasons. It's very close to me. And they added the T, and nobody could understand why. We were all just kind of confused, like, what? It was definitely not a ground up decision, but I can also tell you that that center was in the heart of the area where male prostitutes used to go up and down the street. Santa Monica Boulevard, very well known for that. And the men dressed as women used to go into the women's bathroom at the Gay and Lesbian Center openly. No there was no effort to not allow them to, and these were both mostly street people, and they did a lot of their hygiene in the women's bathroom, kind of an extended hygiene ritual very
Mhm.
often. And this really drove the lesbians away and the bisexual women because we had all these men in our bathrooms doing their hygiene, and there was no effort to keep them out, and the lesbians didn't like it, the women didn't like it, and it was already hard to get the lesbians to come to this center in the middle of Hollywood. Lesbians are cranky and they don't always want to come and interact with gay men, and you know this was yet another reason. And I still went because I'm kind of intrepid, but still that was kind of a way they telegraphed that these men LARPing as women would have more weight in the women's areas than actual women. So, that was a message way before they added the T.
Yeah. Well, what you're saying in terms of characterizing this edition is that there's no basis for that addition of T, that this characterization of people being in the wrong body, this whole trans characterization is something that arose around that time, began around that time, and has been seeded by a medical agenda which underlies this.
Well, it's a big pharma agenda.
Mhm.
It's an opening new markets agenda. It's a creating synthetic sex identities for profit agenda.
It's a cosmetic surgery agenda, isn't it? I mean, it's the same agenda really as cosmetic surgery with breast implants, which have a dubious history in terms of their health consequences for the individuals who go down that route. So this is these are old routes of commerce which have been mined for profit in the past. And you're saying that impetus is driving, that sort of corporate impetus is driving the surgical trans industry.
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Jennifer Billick in the 11th Hour blog, but she has pointed out that you cannot, you can only market male and female so far and dimorphic species so far with women getting breast implants. But if you open the market, etc., other cosmetic surgeries and men getting the ones that are for men, whatever, PEC implants or whatever. But if you open markets in endless synthetic sex identities, you can market these kind of create your own adventure, meet Lego body modifications to a much wider group of people. And now you see, I believe that Ellen Page has ab implants that previously might only have been bought by men. And men, as we see, are getting breast implants along with women. So it really opens markets for organ removals, and they have gender affirming hysterectomies now, and they have
Yes,
all sorts of things where you add and subtract uh, organs and body parts and this and that, and it's kind of a customizable thing. It's no longer trying to necessarily just be a simulation of the opposite sex. It's kind of queering the idea of the body and sexuality. And so you were seeing things like the phalgina, where a man preserves his penis but takes his scrotum and they cut it up into pieces and fashion, I think, just the outer um, implications of a vulva, not a canal, because they would have to take something else to do that. So it's called a phalgina. You could see it on the internet.
Mhm.
So, and that's just the beginning. Now the WPATH has introduced the whole category of eunuch, where, they're possibly children and adults who know from the very beginning that they're supposed to have no genitals. So, you can hear about these nullo surgeries where they're removing all visible sex organs to make
Mhm.
people be eunuchs or nullos. So it's really much farther than men wanting to look like women or women wanting to look like men. I've seen women with beards and breasts. It's just very customizable and very queer, as queer theory talks about queering everything in culture.
It's also just looking into the research that you've done, following your blog on Twitter, Belissa Cohen, at Belissa, BELISSACOHEN. And I was just shocked to see the characterization in one of the adverts for these puberty blockers, that this was drugs and surgery to help your body to more properly match your gender. Wow, that's wow, what a way of putting it.
Well, when you think that old-fashioned conversion therapy, which has been outlawed, sought to change a person psychologically to match their body, in that you would take a woman who was attracted to women and psychologically train her or change her to be attracted to men. Didn't work. They tried. It didn't really work. So they outlawed that. Now they have a much more Machiavellian conversion therapy, which is physiological, where if a woman is attracted to women, you change her body to resemble a male body so that she can live in a medical closet of her own body and LARP as a fake straight person. But as we say, that's straight in the streets, gay in the sheets, because she's still going to be having homosexual relationships or lesbian relationships with women, because you cannot change her DNA to male, and you can't function a working penis. And she's a woman in every cell of her body, even though she might have facial hair or male pattern baldness or different fat distribution, or she might have amputated her breasts. So it's really gay eugenics, and it's definitely woke homophobia.
Well, that's it certainly may be in some cases. Perhaps it's too much to claim in all, because there's so many psychological dynamics that play in this. But certainly, there's a danger that is what's going on. But also, you point out that there's a transhumanist element, and that this whole body modification meme is also being marketed through gaming and through body modification to do with characters that people wish to assume. Uh,
Yes.
it's these are incredible.
There is a man who claims a female identity. His name is Martin Rothblatt, and he actually has uh, a religion about transhumanism. It's called TerraSem, and he has written a book, From Transgender to Transhuman, and he's a very big proponent of transhumanism. And he refers to transgenderism as just as the on-ramp to transhumanism. It's just one of many on-ramps they could have found. There's lots of ways to go to this idea that your brain is going to live on and be connected to technology, and the body's irrelevant, and that we're meat Legos, and our bodies are unnecessary. But, I think it really goes back to this whole thing of men wanting to be the creators and having this big resentment that women are the creators and that women create life and that we are animals and that we're tethered to the earth through our biology. And so here's a man wanting to be the creator of life and the destroyer of life. And because he's so envious and jealous that he doesn't have that power. So he's harnessing technology to do what women do naturally and trying to edge women out of the equation.
Yeah, well, it's been tried in every direction. There was talk of getting rid of men too, but
Yeah.
the characterization of people as being in the wrong body is where all this is seeded out of, isn't it? This entire concept. I wonder if individuals who are Down syndrome are born in the wrong body.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Makes you wonder
if
if,
someone said to a parent or sibling of someone who has Down syndrome, it's a terrible shame that your brother was born in the wrong body, I think they might get a dig in the head, because instead the person would say, what do you mean? We celebrate the unique identity of every individual, including those individuals who are gifted in this unique and particular way. We
yeah.
celebrate it. Whereas here we are not celebrating the body in which one lives, but regarding it as wrong. Is there a sick pathology here, Melissa?
Well, it's pretty much thought that the reason that this whole child medicalization, born in the wrong body, is being pushed so strongly is because it really justifies the male late transitioners that you might think of as transvestites, cross dressers. Now they've re-characterized themselves as transgender, whatever that means. And these are men like Bruce Jenner, Richard Rachel Levine, Martin Rothblatt, Colonel James, Jennifer Pritzker,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of really high powered, high profile, rich men invested both in the medical industrial complex and profiting from it, but also having this personal fetish of claiming female biology. And if they can get the idea across that, oh, the children, you're born that way, you're born in the wrong body, it justifies them claiming the identity of women when it's really a fetish of adult men. It has nothing to do with children, and it has nothing to do with the overwhelming number of teenage girls who are claiming to be boys. They're all complicated phenomena, and they don't have anything to do with each other. It's been quoted as a figure that 95% of these men who want to be perceived as women keep their penis. So there's that. And also, these surgeries are merely cosmetic and they most of the time don't work. They create a wound that is constantly trying to heal. And that's why these men have to constantly use dilators to keep the wound open because it has nothing to do with the parts that women have. It's a wound that heals often and closes up if you don't constantly re rewound it,
So
basically.
it's a cosmetic myth, in
Yeah.
similar to other cosmetic myths that have been sold to people.
And then the last point I want to make is that I think that it's the cruelest idea that if you take a person with, they say, severe dysphoria, and so of course we have to help them because their dysphoria, which is disturbance with either their sex body or their assigned sex-based role, is so great that we need to castrate these people and mutilate their sex organs. And I think that that's the cruelest possible thing that you could do for a person who thinks that they're born in the wrong body or has such great distress, because it's been shown in studies, including the Swedish study where no one was lost to follow up, that there is higher completed suicide, much higher after medicalization and
Mhm.
after genital mutilation. It doesn't go down. Mutilating the genitals of a person with an emotional issue is not a cure for that emotional issue. It exacerbates that issue. And it's a myth that we're helping these people by giving them what they want. They've been sold an idea that this is a cure for dysphoria,
Mhm.
mutilating your genitals or your body or your face or your voice or this or that. It is not a cure. It's a punishment. Especially if you think of gay people, why would you punish a man who feels like he's not manning properly enough by mutilating his genitals? It's just, it's insane. It's sex lobotomy.
But there's certainly an element of creating a social um, presentation at tremendous other costs. And true happiness, I've heard, comes from within and has to
You've
be
heard that.
rooted deeply within. And
Have we
so,
heard that somewhere? Have we heard that it's happiness is an inside job? Have
mhm,
we heard that?
mm. And there certainly are challenges in what we would call a dysphoria, or a feeling that I can only be comfortable when I present as the opposite sex, for example. Well, maybe that individual could learn to be comfortable without that. Maybe that person could learn to be not so binary and to express a spectrum of behavior from classic male to feminine, and express that without having to present as female in order to achieve all of that. Do you follow me that these are psychological approaches that the person could take, but instead of which we seem to be now saying, oh yeah, that's grand, I'm just going to medicalize you straight away
We'll
physically.
see. I
Mhm.
think it's not really a dichotomy in that way. Like, I don't think that it really matters. The point isn't that men can't grow long hair and wear colors
Mhm.
and have sex with whoever will, like, as J.K. Rowling says, any adult who will have you. That's not the issue. The issue isn't that men can't be feminine, whatever that means, or that women can't wear pants and, have, let's say, rough hobbies or however we want to characterize it. The idea is that people shouldn't be encouraged to take poison drugs that destroy their body from the inside out, or think that they need to remove body parts or add body parts in order to be perceived as the opposite sex, and that then the rest of us have to then pretend that they are the opposite sex, and then it's this huge play acting that has to go on because of somebody's discomfort with their sex body or their assigned role. Everybody can wear whatever they want and do whatever they want, but it doesn't make them the opposite sex, and it shouldn't dictate how other people think or behave.
Mhm. And it's just to not characterize it only in one direction. You've also pointed out in your work that disrespect, which we often see in biological males who present as females, who disrespect those who are not attracted to them and insist on trying to get others to be attracted to them, despite the fact that they are not the gender they present as. And that also applies with individuals who are approaching lesbians and who are similarly also finding that there's no attraction. There can be a pushy, predatory nature to some of the behavior that's emerged here. Isn't that a problem? Maybe
Oh,
it's more in the
yes.
male direction than in the female direction. What's your experience?
Well, it's well known that most of these men who wish to be perceived as women are heterosexual men, and they
Mm-hmm.
call themselves transbians. and they're horrible sex pests to lesbians. They go on lesbian dating apps and infiltrate lesbian only spaces and groups. And, at this point, it's almost impossible for lesbians to keep them out, both because of the culture of acceptance of a man is a woman if he says he is, but various laws. Australia, they actually outlawed lesbian only. You can't have it. So, but also, um, I want to point out that there's a growing number of young heterosexual women who claim a gay male identity, and they're sex pests to gay men. And they're on the gay male dating apps as front hole boys. And I'm going to say a word we don't say, faggots, they call
Mm-hmm.
themselves. So just as the men are way pushier, the men who want to have sex with lesbians and be in women only space, and they're scary and they're violent and they're big. And, but I have to say, this is a problem within the LGB community, the same-sex attracted community, that the other letters, T, Q, and some of the other letters are straight people who want in on this now cool gay identity. And
Mm-hmm.
they, there they are being sex pests. I've heard people tell me, some of these people, well, most people are gay after transition, which means that they're heterosexuals wanting to have sex and relationships with same-sex attracted people, which is
Yeah.
not okay. Like, how is that not homophobia? Trying to
Well, this is
practice
it. It's
individual conversion therapy on people
mm,
and get them to not be gay, get them to engage in heterosexual behavior to validate somebody's personal definition of themselves.
yeah. Well, by the same token, the characterization of this being hate speech is just thrown straight back by those who would take an opposite view. But as you've said, um, same-sex attraction has nothing to do with wanting different genitals. That's
Yes.
a different thing entirely. Maybe we've finally hit on the issue with adding the T onto the LGB that in that statement you made there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I like to say that the T kind of Trojan horsed the movement for equal rights for same-sex attracted people, employment, housing, to end that kind of discrimination. And then um, we won marriage equality. So,
Mm-hmm.
anybody can marry anybody. And really, I like to say, all citizens of a Western democracy have the same rights as other citizens in a Western democracy.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea that there's this subset of people who claim an opposite sex identity who need some rights that they don't already have doesn't really make any sense. So this movement of T piggybacked onto this civil rights movement, which was very successful and had gained a lot of goodwill. And after marriage equality was successful, at least in the US where I live, the sky didn't fall in, nothing bad happened.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows gay people in their family now and in their workplace and in media. It's pretty normal and not a big deal. And so they piggybacked onto this movement and kind of using AstroTurf money from pharma and these foundation money and stuff, they pivoted the organizations that had been created by and for gay people, like HRC, Human Rights Campaign, GLAD, which used to stand for Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation and now stands for nothing. The acronym is nothing. And a bunch of these other very high-powered organizations. Last I checked, HRC had a yearly budget of $41 million. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just one organization. Um, they pivoted these organizations to work to promote transgenderism. And what in that process, they created foot soldiers for these bad ideas out of same-sex attracted people. So that's why it seems like um, gay people are on board with this. It's been a forced teaming, as we
Mhm.
like to say. The T was forced teamed with AstroTurf money, with the LGB, and now people think there's such a thing as LGBT, and then some other letters too. So there isn't. It's revisionist history, and this
Yes, there
is,
was an almost ridiculous thing that the more letters we added to that, the more tolerant we were by definition.
well,
Even if we
I
had to
would
make
say,
up extra letters, even if they had no functional psychopathology or behavioral dynamics at all, but just adding letters. And
well,
I,
they're all the
Mhm.
letters have a meaning. I can go through the letters and tell you what they represent, but there's a
We would,
plus at the end.
mm,
And I would say that WPATH, with the recent introduction of their new guidelines, has added E for eunuch. And then many people postulate, not happened yet, that the plus also includes minor attracted persons, the new rebranding of pedophile. So the plus is very much to come. And it's, as you notice, that the plus keeps moving to the right and including more letters every year. So, it's coming attractions.
well, this is a dynamic that we've seen in the past. Certainly, I've seen, as we've discussed ahead of this interview, in the AIDS industry. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when I was active in the resistance to pharma's agenda there. But there we saw again something you referred to, the involvement of these advocacy groups. And then you look into the funding of these groups. And at that time, some of the groups who were, for example, protesting outside Glaxo Wellcome's headquarters, demanding instant access to drugs which had yet to be tested in any clinical trials, those groups protesting outside Glaxo Wellcome were funded by Glaxo Wellcome.
Is that a
You
surprise?
know, the groups who were invading Glaxo Wellcome's stand at the AIDS expos in South Africa and, pouring paint all over themselves and getting great photo ops were funded by Glaxo Wellcome.
And you
This is
take
how
an
the industry works. You're saying that this mechanism has infected this recruiting of LGB into the T agenda.
Well, if you take the work of Jennifer Billick, like she has looked into the people and foundations and corporations behind things like child medicalization.
Mm-hmm.
And you take a foundation like Arcus Foundation, which underwrites all sorts of organizations. I think they gave $15 million to the ACLU. They set up university chairs in queer theory and transgender studies. They seed money into transgenderist organizations and causes all over the world, globally. And they expect receipts back. They expect this agenda to be promoted, or you
Mm-hmm.
won't get any more money. So basically, they're funding these organizations so they promote transgenderism, they promote this ideology in schools, because getting the kids is definitely the way to go with this. And it's exactly what you're saying. It's that they're heavily invested in big pharma. Arcus is run by John Stryker, who is the billionaire heir to the Stryker Corporation, which is one
Mm-hmm.
of the largest medical corporations. And his foundation is Arcus. And if you ask me, it's money laundering to take his Arcus money and put it into a tax-free foundation and then seed a behavior that is going to make a profit for his medical corporation, but that's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so that's basically what you're saying, is like sending Glaxo employee, or not employees, but them funding the protest. It's just very much the same thing. And I think that's is very much happening with these foundations. And there's donor advised funds, so you can hide your donations, your big donations, to any organization. So we don't always know
Mhm.
where these big donations are coming from to fund the let's say trans family support services in San Diego that run by a woman who's kind of the American Susie Green, and is has a quite an extensive organization involved in transing children, middle school kids, teens. There you go.
Yeah. There's another problem, which is that we have seen, for example, with COVID, that with modern mass communications and their ability to come at you from everywhere 24/7 almost, except when you're actually physically asleep, it's coming off the phone, the radio, it's coming off the TV, it's coming through the movies, it's coming in the music, that this phenomenon you're describing is grabbing hold of an increasing number of people and inculcating them into what is effectively, essentially, commercial driven cult behavior powered by this kind of social media phenomenon.
Well, when you think about how pharma and med are the largest lobby in the US, medicine here, most of your listeners might not know, but medicine here is strictly for profit. Everything is for profit. So the medical lobby and the pharma lobby are the largest lobby in the US, which means the largest lobby globally. It's 3 times bigger than the next largest lobby in the US, which is oil and gas. And I've heard that there are 3 pharma medical lobbyists for every person in Congress. And so that's one end. And that's why the government is paying for these transgender surgeries and requiring the military to pay for them. Everybody's paying for them, the private insurance, public insurance, all for profit. And then you look at how big pharma and big med take other money and underwrite every media platform, magazines, the internet, TV, movies, film. And if they were to withdraw their advertising dollars, those platforms would collapse. They almost cannot refuse. So you think of a platform like Condé Nast, which has many publications and websites that they're influenced by their advertisers. And when you see, as Jennifer Billick has pointed out, you can see articles on every single platform and magazine that they own promoting transgenderism, from architectural magazines to, cooking they all find a way to put it in there. So it's no surprise that people are being
Yeah.
influenced and taken in. It's really no surprise.
Well, it's something that is very concerning as well, that California is working on legislation which will enable it to invite people to flee to California with their children, and have legislation in place that will enable no recourse for the other partner who is involved in that family relationship to object. And also
Fenton,
working on big tech and the Department of Justice, trying to persuade them to begin to censor, intimidate, harass, or otherwise prosecute people like yourself who raise objections to these medicalization of these issues.
well, that bill that you referred to, SB 107, it's
Mhm.
been signed by Governor Newsom. It's in place now that California is a sanctuary state, a refuge for any minor who wants to come here and medicalize, or any parent who wants to bring their child to California against the objections of another parent.
Right.
It's fully in
It's
place and
fully
it's
operational.
fully up. Yeah, it's done. It's signed. It's
Yeah. We see similar legislation in California as well in relation to a doctor's inability now to question the standard protocols, and that would leave a doctor open to investigation if they do. So dissent is being shut down. That's why it's so good to speak with yourself, Melissa, because you're like at the heart of where the spearhead of this is in California. What's it like? You've been at the rallies in recent days. What's it like on the ground, and what's it like actually taking this thing on the ground as you are?
well, I have to say because it's an astroturfed movement, it's a top-down movement, not a bottom-up movement. Both the people who are promoting transgenderism, well, not both, but them, and also because the media is so controlled by this AstroTurf money that most people don't either really know that this is a big issue or understand why it's a big issue or why it's bad. So there's really not much going on around this issue. I don't know if you know, but the whole UK can fit into, let's say, our state of Oregon, which is not one of our bigger states.
Hmm.
So, like, it's very, very hard for a grassroots movement to um, get a lot of numbers in one place. I think we're still building the opposition, but it's very hard for us to get the word out that there is opposition, that people aren't alone, that they're not crazy, that this is weird and bad. And so people are isolated, thinking that they don't know anybody who has these ideas. But with the emperor's new clothes, everybody's thinking this, and
Yeah.
nobody can say anything except, "Oh, that emperor, he looks very fine." So our what we're trying to do is just get the word out almost, individually to people and on social media that there is a pushback and that it's not coming from the right, it's coming from the left, it's coming from disaffected leftists who are annoyed with a lot of things that are going on.
From
But
detransitioners as well, a growing community. It's coming
yes,
from them too, from their hard experience.
but I think that they're very, they'll lose their friend groups. They'll be social outcasts if they speak up. So I think most of them really don't have people to talk to. There's parents that I know also. I work with parents and detransitioners, and the parents are pretty isolated because they'll lose their friend groups. And people are always telling them, oh, just be kind, just affirm your child, that this, that, or the other. And so there's a lot of people who don't have support.
Yeah. If just to not to mischaracterize um, unnecessarily those who genuinely have uh, deep feelings that they wish to present as female, and just to try and get a grasp on the relative proportion of medical intervention in that community. You're saying that 95% of individuals who wish to or who do present as the opposite gender have not had any genital alteration or other body alteration. Is that right?
That's what we hear. Now, of course, nobody's doing any research, nobody's doing any studies. It's politically incorrect to
Mhm.
study any of this from child to adult to rapid onset gender dysphoria in teen girls and boys. But that's what we hear. We hear 95%. And we also hear this figure, which is much better documented, that if not affirmed as the opposite sex, kids who are not conforming to sex-based stereotypes will grow out of these feelings around the end of puberty. Puberty is something that really resolves a lot of these feelings. And so to stop puberty and to give these kids puberty inhibiting drugs and wrong sex hormones is the exact opposite of what they should do to allow them to work out their issues, to enter adulthood in a healthy body, and that most of these kids, not all, of these non-conforming kids who have opposite sex ideation are grow up to be gay, lesbian, or bisexual. So they're preventing a whole generation of gay people to come of age and medicalizing them, which I think is gay eugenics. So if you're thinking about these adults, you're think like many of them might just grow, if these kids will grow to adults and go through puberty and find their place in the world and understand who they are, they're, you know what I mean. And I don't
Yeah,
think that
it's a natural,
it's a natural
unforced
progression of,
evolution of the personality
yeah,
rather than
it's
it being
human,
steered into a specific sort of
yeah,
cult almost.
it's
Um,
growing up, it's learning about yourself. Adolescence is hard for everyone. I don't think anyone breezes through it. And we all thought things about ourselves at the beginning that we probably didn't think 5 or 10 years later. But, the idea that men need or want to present as women, like, I don't think that a man can present as a woman. I mean, he can wear clothes manufactured for women, and he can grow his hair or wear a wig, and he can talk in a high voice, and he can, wear uncomfortable underwear and uncomfortable shoes as women are stereotyped to do. But I don't think that most of these guys really present as women. They present as men with who are somewhat delusional, if you ask me. But,
mm,
I think we all see them in the supermarket now and on the street and everywhere. And we have to keep in mind that autogynephilia is a sexual fetish of adult men who are sexually aroused at the idea of themselves as women. And when we participate, call them she and her, like, tell them how gorgeous they are or all this stuff, we're participating in their sexual arousal. And I personally think it's fine to do that in your house, in your bedroom, in your kitchen, wherever you want to do, in your backyard. But when you take it into the public realm and expect sexual validation from women and men for your adult sexual fetish, that I think is inappropriate.
yeah, well, that's certainly one of the cohorts who need to look at behavior, personal behavior. There's no doubt about that. What I think we've characterized as pests who can be of both sexes. But we've shone a great light, I think, on this. It's such a deep topic, and we've only scratched the surface of it, Melissa, in the conversation that we've had tonight. But anything upcoming that you'd like to advise us of that you think we should know?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Belissa Cohen. This next month, Kelly J. Keene, also known as Posey Parker, is doing a speaking tour of the US. So we're working on that right now. It's just launching. And I'm always trying to work with same-sex attracted people, LGBT people, detransitioners, women, to support each other, to say the truth and to acknowledge biology and to say that same-sex attraction has absolutely nothing to do with wanting different genitals. And everything after the LGB really is straight people.
Okay. We're starting to understand this, and hopefully we can continue to do it, Melissa, without people screaming at each other and accusing each other of hate. It's just trying to achieve understanding on all sides. And for the understanding you've shed on this, and for all your work that you've done, you've been active on this issue, and you've done great work, Melissa. Thanks for that, and thanks for being with us here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, and that's it for this edition of The Beautiful Truth. I hope you'll join me again soon for more. I'll be back with that on breakfornews.com and informedconsent.ie. But for now, for The Beautiful Truth, with Melissa Cohen, this has been Fintan Dunn reporting. See you soon.